Hello and welcome to a spoiler cast for The Last of Us Part 2. I'm Jordan Midler and I'm thrilled to be joined by Hamish Black from the excellent YouTube channel Writing on Games, as well as the Writing on Games cast. How you doing, Hamish?
I'm doing all right. Aye, you flatter me with the intro.
I flattered
You were going for this like really professional intro and stuff, and I immediately barge in saying, "Oh, you flatten me."
I would like to point out that this man has over 150 odd thousand YouTube subscribers.
Oh, and I'm about to give my kind of very conflicted opinions on this probably beloved game.
According to some, is one of the best games on the PlayStation 4. According to some in this Discord chat, is one of the best games on the PlayStation 4. Now, I'm sure.
That person is not me.
Spoilers. Now, I'm sure you're aware of this, but we're about to pick the bones of The Last of Us Part 2. We're going through the plot in an admittedly somewhat condensed form because, Jesus, this game is packed and we would be here literally all day. And we're going to discuss what we thought of the game's most significant beats. In other words, spoilers, 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 spoilers. So let's get into it. They fucking killed Joel.
Aye.
Within like 2 hours, they just absolutely... It's genuinely brutal and horrifying. And I want to know, do you think it's earned?
I think so. In the set, like... This game's whole kind of approach to like violence and stuff like that is just it kind of goes beyond what most other games do with or like how most other games kind of portray violence and stuff. Like I think that this is like a really good way of showing how just stark the brutality of this world is, because it just fucking happens. It's like it actually happens because Joel and Tommy tried to help Abby,
Yep.
and they end up going to the lodge. I can't remember the name of it, and then it's just, oh, what's your name? Oh, I'm Joel, and then everyone just fucking turns like silently, and it's this weird thing where like throughout that whole fucking scene, I was thinking, oh God, like what's going to happen here? Like, it was as soon as Joel got his leg fucking blasted with a shotgun, I had in my head like that's a fucking wound that you don't just come back from in this world. But I had that like, it was weird because I just did a video on The Last of Us where I was saying that, Joel kind of did some really fucking monstrous things, and this is probably like karmatically, redressing the balance in a lot of ways. But I had this thing in my head of like, oh God, please save him. And I was like, that's a weird thought. But I liked how that was all happening in my head on a very quick basis, because the scene itself kind of came out of fucking nowhere, and so yeah, I think that like I think the game actually handled that really well. I want to say,
I agree. I definitely think it sets up the idea that everything is on the table from then on out. Like, they have established that the cover star of the previous game, the protagonist for most of the previous game, is gone. I literally thought that when you jump over the fence as Ellie and you go into the house, I was like, okay, this is going to be a bit of tutorializing, and you're going to rescue Joel, but he's going to be injured, so that's why you have to go off on your own and get revenge and kill every last one of them, as said in the original trailer. But then as it started to go, I was like, who is there left to barge in the door and shoot all these people and save Joel? Like, it's the kind of moment that I think can only work on a console generation that can like pull off that kind of graphical fidelity, because when he's lying on the ground and he sees Ellie, he can just get his eye open, and you couldn't do that on a PS3. It would just look like a kind of red blur, and the look on her face as well. It's just, that scene, it will be on animators at Naughty Dog's CV for the rest of their lives.
I think there's like plenty of scenes that are of that kind of. I mean, this is like one of like the most kind of like close. This is probably like the closest to human a game has looked for me, like just purely down to things like facial twitches and stuff that were like The Last of Us, the original, was kind of pushing that anyway, but like this kind of takes it to another level. I mean, it's also, this is a game where, like, I mean, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but like video game kisses have never looked so normal. It's but the thing that gets me about that because that intro is basically, you know, running up to Joel's death, and like and I'd heard about like how this was some kind of massively grim, dark thing, and you know, a lot of people were kind of like, I guess, kind of turning their noses up at this thing because it was, you know, going to be overly violent and stuff, and you know, but then it kind of opens with fucking Guitar Simulator on the touchpad.
I love Guitar Simulator. It's one of the only nice bits in the game.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, then you find out that you're going through this fucking town and you're talking about like a party that happened the other night, and then you're learning fucking combat tutorials through fucking snowball fights.
It felt like they would give us 5 minutes of normality and let us just like breathe in the world before going to that dark place, but it's literally the walk from Ellie's cabin to the outer reaches of Jackson, and then from there on out it's like, right, we're doing this now.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, I really, you know, I was kind of thinking like, well, in the first 15 minutes of the first game, Joel's daughter gets shot dead. Like, it's, you know, like, whereas here we're actually getting some time to kind of like breathe in this world. Like the interesting thing to me is that like the central tension in that first game was Joel's, in that relationship anyway, was Joel's experience of life kind of pre-apocalypse, and Ellie's, you know, kind of whimsical like ignorance of that. Like, she wasn't around pre-apocalypse, so it's, you know, like, so that was where the kind of a lot of the kind of, I guess like tension's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, it's like that's where a lot of the kind of character interactions came from and stuff. Whereas here it's like, oh yeah, this is like kind of now it's a society where like everyone has a fucking massive plasma TV or something like that. Like there's electricity, there's kind of there's like suburbs, and people have like cars.
You walk past the school. You walk past the school that you can't go into, but you can see there's like a teacher preparing lessons through the window. Like,
it's like there's a graveyard and stuff. There's like basic municipal function, like, which is a weird thing to say, but it's like it's there's some degree of like normality kind of creeping back into this world, but that's in the very limited view that you see of Jackson as a town. And it's like then you start to realize like, oh shit, this is not like the world kind of, this is not people kind of taking back the world. This is like a defense from the ravenous brutality that's been encroaching on it from the outside. Because as soon as you take that step outside, you realize like, oh, this hasn't gotten better. Like, it's gotten better in this very specific part, but Jesus, the rest of it is like, you know, like nature won.
So do you think that obviously the Joel stuff was one of the big plot points that got leaked? Somehow I completely avoided those leaks. Do you think that if you knew them it would diminish the impact, or do you think that it eventually just knowing that happens doesn't matter, it's how it affects the rest of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, in a way, I think I was kind of fully expecting Joel to die. Like, again, I completely avoided the leaks, and I actually didn't. I saw the first 2 reveal trailers, but outside, like, you know, the E3 stuff. But outside that, I remained remarkably like blind on a lot of this stuff. And yeah, I like Joel's death is, like I say, it's that's the kind of the stopping point on the intro. You know, that's like, okay, you've had your intro, now this is the rest of the game, because like there's a lot of fucking game to go after that.
There is so much game to go that I just think that I think that might be when the late title card happens, but that is such a that almost feels like a completely different game because you're expecting. Speaking of the trailers, I don't know if you've noticed, but they actually did fake trailers for
Did they?
for part 2 because there's, you know how later when you're in Seattle and Jesse jumps down and grabs you from behind and goes like, and Ellie turns around and says, "What the hell are you doing here?" In the original trailer, that's Joel.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
they clearly they were clearly like, it's like fucking Metal Gear Solid 2. Like they made fake trailers to give the impression that Joel was in much more of this game than he actually was. And I think as soon as it happened and he was dead, I thought of that and I was like, so what? Is that still going to happen? Is he going to be a ghost, or is he somehow going to survive his wounds? Are we going to smash cut to Jackson and he's in a hospital? Then we smash cut to Jackson and it's his grave. And I was like, okay, what is this game like? How long of this game do we have to go?
I mean, like there are bits where characters will get like, you know, what seem like fairly, you know, severe fucking wounds, and then, you know, like, you know, I mean, we've given the spoiler warning. Like Tommy gets fucking shot in the head later on, and you know, and then it's like, oh, okay, well he's blind, right, presumably, but you know, he's still alive. So you know, there is.
Ellie is superhuman in this game. The amount of shit she takes and just kind of bounces back from it. They did establish though in the first game, Joel takes rebar through the stomach and somehow manages to not get a horrible infection, like
sepsis.
Yes. What do you think of this? I don't know if you've seen much of this, but there's been such a negative response online to the leaks, and the game's getting review bombed before anyone has played it, apart from people in the press, obviously. Because they're like, oh, they killed the goodie from the first game, so this for this. It's like, well, one, he's not the good guy. And two, you need to play the game to understand what's actually happening here.
I mean, you know, people forming their own critical consensus of a game they've not played. Color me shocked. You know, it's like I don't know. I it was the same with, like, you know, Death Stranding and all that. Like people were like, the reviews hit and people were saying, oh, it's kind of, you know, just walking about, and people were like, oh my god, you don't understand Kojima's masterwork and all that stuff, and then they played it and people forgot about it after a couple of months. So yeah, you know, it's like that part doesn't surprise me. I think the vitriol with which this game has been getting, like, because I went and looked up the leaks like yesterday after beating the game, just to see like what, because they were saying like, oh, the ending isn't actually out there, and I just wanted to see like what people were getting kind of mad about. And it's the fact I guess it's the fact you play as Abby, like for the second act of the game.
I thought it was the fact that the thing that I saw, and this proves how like incoherent the leaks are, the anger over the leaks are, that people aren't actually sure what people are angry about.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that people seem to be angry about this game, and it's not the reasons I think you could be legitimately angry about this game.
It's totally ancillary things. It was, people heard the following. They heard Joel dies. There was a character called Abby who has extreme musculature, and they heard that there was a trans character. So they were like, okay, that's Abby, and she kills Joel. So for a lot of capital G gamers, a trans character that we've never heard of before killing Joel is just alarm bells going off. And it's like, you're so, even in the comments on my review, people were talking about Abby, saying that, why can't you talk about Abby? She's obviously the trans character. And I was like, mate, play the game. Just wait. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, you just don't.
Like the people talking about like, oh, Abby's the trans character, like, just because she lifts weights and she's buff, like, that's kind of really weird and gross.
It's very gross. Abby's fucking jacked, but on a side note, it was cool to see a female character with like a different body type, like a different look like a human being.
For sure, totally.
So we're gonna move on now to setting off for Seattle, because that's like the main start. What I thought was going to be the main body of the game until the second half of the game started. So they start with like an open worldish area, like Uncharted Lost Legacy. What did you think about that? Did you think it was good, bad, meaningless, busy work, good exploration?
I thought that it was that was the point of the game where I was like, okay, there's a lot getting in the way of the story that I want here. It was a lot of going to kind of places and thinking, oh wait, this isn't actually the way I'm meant to go. And at the end of it, you get some ammo and a note from a guy that's like, oh, I'm dying and I'm gonna shoot myself.
Yeah.
And that was
The old Fallout skeleton holding a gun.
I mean, well, that there's plenty of that in this game, like way more so than the first game, even.
Yeah.
And that was the point at which I started to think, like, okay, this feel like can we get to the point here? Like, it's I don't know if that's maybe just a flaw in the way I'm approaching this game, because but I don't know, I just felt that, like, okay, you're making me do a lot. Like, I'm not one of these people that disliked the gameplay in The Last of Us, and I certainly didn't dislike it here. Like, I actually really enjoy it, and I think that it contributes a lot to the story.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of just thematics and everything. But that whole kind of open world section, like, it kind of makes sense with, exploring the kind of the post-apocalypse and stuff. I just don't know that it really it kind of just didn't work for me. Like, I was that it was like okay, you have to go to this building, clear it out, and then you have to go all the way across the city to this other building and clear that out, and the thing you do is you get petrol for a generator. Like, it was just a little bit anticlimactic, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that. Actually, I really liked it. It worked for me because it gave me more Ellie and Dina stuff with each area you went to, and that was kind of what I was wanting. Especially, did you go into the music shop?
Yes, I did.
Did you see the moment, the Guitar Simulator 2?
Yep.
So that's my favorite scene in the whole game, and that is the kind of thing that I can't believe they made optional, because it says so much about those two characters' relationships that it seemed like an essential piece of storytelling. But I like the bravery of them saying, if you want the complete story, including massive chunks, you have to spend a little time walking around. Sure. It was obviously very reminiscent of the Uncharted Lost Legacy open area, and I think it's more successful because the Uncharted Lost Legacy open area was very gamey. It was like, here are the 3 things you have to go and do before you can progress, whereas this was like, if you go straight for the fuel, you can just get it, and that's you. If you go straight for the dome, you can get the fuel, and that's you. But there's like 5 other areas you can go to, and you can get guns from later in the game out of order. And it's just, I thought it was interesting. I like it when, because it's a very linear game, but I like it when Naughty Dog do things that are slightly out of their comfort zone. Whether or not it was completely successful or not, I suppose depends on the player, but I thought it worked for me. After that, go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say that the music store thing made it worth it for me. Even though it's a bit like guitars seem to be strewn about this world like currency.
Yeah.
There's so many guitars just fucking everywhere. It's but yeah, that was I like that bit was really great. And kind of the exploration around the city wasn't wholly pointless for that reason. So
yeah. And it's nice horse mechanics.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what's actually kind of, speaking of out of order, did you find the map of Seattle in the first area? You can find it in the like first wee, the caravan on the side of the road before you get into proper Seattle. So did I, but apparently you just get it automatically later on if you don't find it there, which is kind of interesting. Because I was thinking that was like an optional building. If someone didn't go in there, how the hell are they meant to navigate? But I thought that was kind of cool. So
for sure.
We skip forward a wee bit and we discover that Dina is pregnant. What did you think of the Dina and Ellie relationship in general across the game?
I thought it was I thought it was really interesting to explore a kind of a relationship of that kind of like low like scale, like in the grand scheme of things, like a relationship is not the thing that really matters, but it's exploring that within such a high stakes environment was was really neat. I thought that those characters like bounced really well off each other. And
I thought the performances were amazing. Ashley Johnson and I believe it's Shannon Woodward. I'm going to double check that while I talk.
Okay.
It's so believable between them that it's not a pure. It doesn't feel like a narrative forced relationship. It feels like these two people are actually attracted to each other, and it's complicated because obviously, Dina is presumably bi or of a similar like sexual preference, and and Ellie is dealing with not feeling quite good enough for her and competing with Jessie, who is also her friend. So it just felt like teenager shit is kind of like a pejorative, but like it just felt like real teenager shit, which these people probably don't get a lot of experience of. And
well, I was kind of stopping myself from saying like kind of high school drama in a weird way, like because it feels like more than that given the circumstances of it all. But when you break it down, it's like, oh, there's like these people broke up and now she's trying to get with you, and like it's kind of and there's a conversation that happens between you and Jessie where Ellie kind of is like, yeah, you're handsome, but you're not my type, it's so
I think that's the only bit that's really, I think that's the only bit that's super obvious. For like the rest of it's just played as, I was about to say it's played straight, which probably isn't the best turn of phrase considering the circumstances, but it's not treated as like, oh, Ellie's only character point in the second game is her attraction, and like for the people that have played The Last of Us and Left Behind and Part 2, it makes complete sense. It doesn't feel like you're missing anything really. It'd have been more surprising if like just suddenly in the second one she was like pure into Jessie and pure straight. I just thought it was well done.
Well, yeah, I mean the thing is like, the like the people that were again like kind of mad about the whole like Ellie's sexuality and stuff, and I'm like, did you play Left Behind, like the DLC from the first one? Like they kind of pretty heavily imply that there's some kind of like there's it's not, this is not without precedent.
The people that get angry about games don't play them. They just read about them and watch their favorite content aggregators telling them what they think. So I can't imagine anyone that saw like the Ellie and Riley stuff from Left Behind was anything but they're probably just like, I want to see how this progresses, and I think it's really paid off. It's like the entire through line throughout the game is Dina and Ellie's relationship. Speaking of Jessie, what did you think of him as a character? Because I thought he would have been a more significant player than he ends up being.
Yeah, I think that like he ends up kind of being his role in the story ends up being like the person that jumps in to save everyone, and I like Jessie as a character. I think that he like he's funny and stuff like that. I also like the again, kind of maybe skipping ahead a little bit, I like the sound, this makes sound like a fucking psychopath. I like the brutality with which his or the kind of starkness with which his life is kind of snuffed out, because in the sense that it's like it's just okay, you're just talking to him, and then like seconds later it's just bullet in the head and he's done, and like again, it contributes to the theme of the brutality of this world. But I do think that his character doesn't really amount to all that much besides like, hey, I saved my pals and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
It would have been. I think it would have been nicer to get a bit more time with him, because he's obviously there to catch Dina and Ellie when they're in Eugene's weed palace.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a great scene, because I didn't find this in my first playthrough. I only found it when I streamed it the other day. Did you find the stash of porn in Eugene's?
Yeah. What was it like?
Smash Brandy's cooch. 10 on 10. They deserve all the awards for that. Yeah, he seems like between him, and I also thought like there must be so much of this game on the cutting room floor. This feels like a 40-hour game that eventually someone said to Neil Druckmann and Haley Gross. They were like, no, this will
Yeah,
never get
exactly.
finished. It's already 2 discs. Like
It's already massively too long as well, but we'll get onto that.
Yeah, we needed The Last of Us Part 2, Part 1, and Part 2.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I thought Jesse could have been. I think if Jesse was built up more, how he is killed would have affected me more. Because when it happened, I was just like, oh shit! I wasn't like I didn't feel like a great loss, because it's not as if that had happened to Dina, it would have been absolutely heartbreaking. But
Oh yeah, of course.
happening to Jesse is just like, were you just here to get shot? Is that
Yeah.
Or were you just here to be the person that grabs Ellie from behind and does the "what the hell are you doing here" moment? But I thought his performance was good. Everyone's performances are so good in this. They're all stunning. Just after this is when we first encounter the Seraphites, and one of the most genuinely terrifying parts of the game, when those whistles first start, I was like, oh no, this is so much more scary than the infected ever were, because I feel like I'm just going to get absolutely tortured. What did you think about the introduction of the Seraphites?
So I thought that, like, it was such a, the wolves were all like, the was it the Washington Liberation Front or whatever?
Yeah.
They were all very much like, hey, they're over here, come on, we gotta get them, like, oh fuck, all that kind of stuff. And the zombies or the infected, sorry, are always, like, there's the clickers, and the audio is very pronounced, and it's like the kind of anguish screams and stuff. And suddenly you come across these people armed with bow and arrows, and they're just whistling to each other. It's like, oh, these guys are organized in a way that the wolves maybe even weren't. It's like there's no real reaction at first. Like, as you progress, you start to, like, there's a lot more of that kind of, the trespasser is over here and stuff like that. But that introduction of them, it's like, oh fuck. And that's when they introduced, like, the mechanic of having to remove arrows and stuff. So it was like all this stuff that you now have to think about while taking on an enemy that seems much more coordinated and organized and stuff. So
it was just so anxiety inducing, especially when you start to pick up the patterns of, like, oh, they're whistling quicker because they're trying to raise a layer or check with someone. It's like the call and response whistles, and it's like, I was like, this is so good. And it's in that area when you're, like, skulking through the kind of wet, lush kind of grass, and that is such a showpiece for the game. And I thought, okay, this is great. It did disappoint me later when they got into the old, like, they're over here kind of stuff. But I even think they're, like, the mindless merc dialogue is, like, better than any other, because they call each other by name. And that's such a small detail, but the idea that, oh, of course these people that are on patrol together know each other, and they're probably horrified to see me, like, shoot them in the head from across this, like, this, like, 20-meter radius.
So again, we will get on to my extremely severe problems with this game structurally, but that, like, again, a lot of people were like, I saw a lot of people kind of reacting to the announcement that, oh, the enemies have names, and they'll call each other out with, like, oh, what an innovative way to kind of approach this whole, like, enemies have backstories thing. And I was like, well, if it works, it's like, and again, it's like, I think that, and it's really simple. It's like, it happens to the dogs as well, which makes killing the many dogs you will fucking kill in this game all the more harrowing. And
that's 100%. That's 100% the reason that they let you pet that dog right at the start in Jackson, because they're like, it's going to get worse from here.
Exactly.
Quick side note: did you notice that it was Gustavo Santaolalla?
Yep. It's I only noticed that because I went to the model viewer, and it was like, oh, Gustavo, and I was like, oh fuck, Gustavo Santaolalla is, like, maybe my favorite film soundtrack composer, so it's it was nice to see. I very much enjoyed that. So but yeah, I don't know, like the game, we'll get on to, but, like, that
the
just
horror.
that fact is just that fact about like the enemies calling each other by name gets across what the game then takes like 12 hours or 10 to 12 hours
Yeah.
to explain it, like, to you very directly. And I don't know, but yeah, like that's where you want to go next with this.
We'll go next to Nora in the hospital. The hospital sequence was interesting because this is somewhat inside baseball, but I don't know what was the see when Sony sent you your code. Did they send you an embargo that was longer than the Necronomicon?
Yes, yeah, it was fucking wild, and most of it didn't apply because they sent me the codes after the embargo.
So when they sent me the code and the embargo, I was like, how do I make a video review out of this? Like, so you can't capture anything. you can't talk about half the game. You can't capture anything. Go for it. So most of the, a lot of people's reviews are just fucking prepositions because there's really no way to talk about the game without without like spoiling something for someone. But one of the areas they did like to capture was this kind of hospital assault leading up to Nora, who's one of the wolves that you're going after. This is when Ellie like tortures information out of her and calls back to earlier when they're in the Seraphite hotel, and she says like, "Oh, Tommy did some bad shit," and then like a couple hours later, Ellie's like, "Bad shit." That
yeah, exactly.
Might be time.
Clearly effective.
But more importantly, this leads to another amazing scene that I think you'll be able to wax lyrical on, is the flashback to Ellie finding out what actually happened.
Oh fuck! Oh my god! Oh, it's so. I made a video on this this kind of on the ending of The Last of Us very recently, and talking about how it's great because it's all left up to the interpretation of the visual details and stuff. It like the game is like a really great example of like show don't tell in that regard. And I had this idea that and it's been with me for fucking 7 years now, that Ellie knew that she was going to have to like die in order to get the vaccine made and everything like that. And this game very like distinctly suggests that she didn't. This is the flashback when they're going to get guitar strings. Is that right?
I believe so. It's the one where Ellie walks through the hospital and walks through the hospital, and then they're standing on the edge of the view of the hospital that you always see, and she asks Joel like, "I'm going to ask you again, but if you lie to me again, we're done," kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the one where she kind of just like breaks down when he, because he's very kind of, again, he's very much like, they were gonna have to kill you and I stopped them. And that was the kind of shit I was wanting from this sequel. It's like, okay, if they're going to make a sequel at all, that's the stuff I want to know about. It's like, how does Ellie navigate this clearly fraught relationship now with Joel, given that she clearly knows that something is going on, and Joel definitely knows that what he did. Like, how are they going to navigate that? I'd say that there's kind of less of, there's only really one flashback I can think of where they don't make that kind of the main focus. Like, there's only one flashback, and it's the one where they go to the dinosaur museum.
Yeah, on Ellie's birthday.
Yeah, and that's like, I think that flashback is fantastic, and I kind of wish there was more of that, where it was like, okay, here's something where the focus of the discussion is not, or the focus of the flashback is not just like, oh, what happened at the hospital.
Yeah, that kind of downtime that is just them two existing, like, in a post Last of Us 1 world. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That also screams to me cutting room floor stuff. I'm sure they would have loved to put more stuff like that in, but the ones they leave in are kind of the the narrative thrusters, because the one obviously the one at the museum isn't. It's not directly about the Doctor or anything like that, but it shows her learning future days, and it just shows their relationship building up more, where it's so clear that this was obviously the implication by the end of The Last of Us, but Joel just sees her as like a complete daughter now, and it's emphasized by when you go into his house after he dies. On his mantle, there's a picture of him and Sarah next to a picture of him and Ellie. Like,
yes, yeah.
There's no distinguishing between that now. But yeah, I agree. I would like to have seen a bit more. But see the scene with that revelation. Did that give you what you wanted from that conversation, or did you expect it to go differently?
I think that was it's difficult. I think that scene, like that conversation between them, needed to happen at some point. And I think they handled it, well, which is that, Joel is he's clearly like, there's some kind of regret in him that he did that, because, like, he knows how much this is tearing her up,
Yeah.
and her breakdown when he says the very kind of like curt description of what went, like, they were going to kill you and I stopped them, like, her breakdown in reaction to that, and he like does what a dad would do and tries to like comfort her, and she goes, "Don't you fucking touch me," if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I think that happens, but it's like, and she is like, and that's another thing, like the breakdowns in this game are like very convincing, because it's like, it's not just like, oh my god, it's like proper fucking panicked breathing, bawling fucking tears, like, it's, like, oh my god, like, what the fuck, it's.
I think that's another thing they could only achieve with this kind of graphical fidelity, because anything else it would come across as kind of pantomime, but
yeah,
here it's like, this is authentic, this is completely believable. There's not much, the player doesn't have to buy in much, they can just accept it. And I think there's a specific scene right at the end that we'll get to in about 7 hours time, that really emphasizes that. In fact, a scene that really emphasizes that comes up in a second when Ellie heads off to the aquarium and ends up finding Mel and Owen, who are two of the WLF that were in the room when Joel was killed, and she ends up killing both of them, and then discovering that Mel was in fact pregnant, which the player already knew because it's told in the first like short Abby playable scene. But the look on her face when she discovers that, it's like, okay, Ashley Johnson's going for that BAFTA. She wants the back to back. Like, that was the moment when I was just sitting there like, I don't like Ellie anymore. She's such a
yeah.
Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But I get why she would do this. But right now, I do not like her, and I was like, this feels like the game's about to end. Are we really going to end it? Are we really going to end it here?
Yeah.
What did you think about that whole kind of aquarium scene?
I thought that, I mean, it was definitely, that's the point where you realize, like, so the first game, what I find so interesting about it is that violence is almost never out of anger in the first game. It's always just instinctual. It's the need to survive. Whereas here it's like, no, violence is in service of vengeance. It's like, and you see that in Ellie as she kind of progresses towards the aquarium, when in a way very kind of reminiscent of Spec Ops: The Line. And I'm fairly sure this is the case. I would need to go back and revisit the footage because I just beat this game fucking yesterday.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that as she goes along, like when she kills an enemy, it kind of goes from oh fuck to like increasingly like gnarled, or like increasingly
she's just like
angry. Fuck you, it's like
you can see, like the look in her face. Like, I didn't intentionally do this, but a lot of the times when I was doing the kind of the stealth kills, it would end up showing Ellie's face next to the person that was stealth killing's face, and that it's so uncomfortable because it's so realistic to watch these people, the light kind of leave their eyes, and initially Ellie does look uncomfortable, and I don't know if there's actually a change in the animations or these just lined up incredibly and there's like a cycle of like 50 that it could be.
Yeah.
But it does look like she's just gritted teeth, like, I'm going to kill every single person I come across, not even going to ask a question. And that was like, that kind of clued me into, well, there's a few things that clued me in, but that was one of the things that was like, this can't be even close to being finished, because Ellie has to come back around. There has to, which you can argue whether or not she actually does by the end, because the ending isn't very happy either. But and then initially when you run into Mel and Owen and kill both of them, I was just like, whatever. But I think those are two of the characters where they actually pull off the enemies are human issue in the second half. They don't completely do it, and I'm sure we're about to talk about it because we're about to get to the second half of the game. But straight after that, you're back at the theater, and Abby rushes in, shoots Jesse, and it's revealed that she's the daughter of the Doctor from The Last of Us.
Yeah.
The text you sent me, when I'm gonna find it now, because I was grinning from ear to ear. Let's see. God, you sent me so many fucking texts about this game.
I sent you more text than I send anyone ever.
Yeah. Okay, Wednesday at 9:24. Well, Ellie just killed the pregnant girl. Holy fucking shit, Abby in the theater. Oh fuck, Abby's dad was the fucking surgeon, and I just responded, welcome to Act 2, have fun. So what did you think about that revelation in a bit more detail?
I thought that it's weird, because like when I think back on it, it's more like this is the soap opera to The Last of Us, like to the original's character study. You know, it's like this is the soap opera where you tune in to find out what happened next, and it's like it's a little serendipitous, but when you find out that, like, you know that, okay, something went down, and it's probably to do with what happened with the Fireflies, why Joel died in the way that he did.
Yeah.
And like that revelation was it was weird. It wasn't like, oh shit, that's why. It was like, oh yeah, that's the one thing of the many things that Joel did to many different groups of people that is why this particular group wants him dead. You know, it's like it was like, okay, we have our our choice here, and it's I think that they handled that really well in terms of how they fleshed out Marlene's kind of character there, where it was like Marlene really did not want to sacrifice Ellie for the sake of this, but the Doctor, who is, you know, a very, you know, friendly man, he cares about zebras.
Save the goddamn zebra. One of the best animated zebras you'll see. Do you think they were like, right, we don't have giraffes in this one, but we're really good at animating animals. Can we just do this? Can we just stick something in there? We've done all these rabbits that run about and when you, like, in the corner of your eye. Can we do a big zebra?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I thought like there was definitely that kind of like, oh my god, it's her dad was the surgeon. Like, you know, that is all I needed.
Yeah,
that is all I needed to be like, oh, the enemies have backstories. Like, I mean, I got that fucking, you know, like minute fucking one. Like, I got that in the first fucking game.
Yeah,
but that's all I needed to be like, okay, the game is saying that these characters have backstories. The people that your actions have consequences. The people you killed also had stories, and now they're seeking justice for that. Like, fine.
You say that's all you needed. Can I interest you in 10 more hours of gameplay?
Oh, God.
So you play the second half of the game as a completely different person.
Oh.
You play the second half of The Last of Us Part 2 as a completely different person, Abby. And so it sets you up. The WLF have taken over this stadium. They've made it into this kind of micro community similar to Jackson, but they're a lot more militant. They're basically a militia. And then you do this mission, and I was like, this is strange. This feels like a tutorial mission, like 15 hours into the game. And then I picked up a skill manual, and I was like, why am I picking up a skill manual for a character that I'm going to play one level for? And then I saw that there was a padlock that appears when there's another one that you can get, and I was like, okay, so there's 3. And then I picked up more skill manuals, and I was like, oh, we're playing that. We're playing this. We've got another game to play here.
Yep. That was it was when I was picking up like weapon upgrade things, and I was like, oh, why am I upgrading my? I was actually thinking like, oh, are they gonna like set this up where you're building up a character to face off against Ellie here, like, and it's gonna be the choices that you make in terms of upgrading your character are going to matter. But no, it's actually just like, here's another game, like here's another story that we're going to like make you live out, and I think they dropped the ball significantly, like in a major way that will like that hammered home to me that like, okay, this is the soap opera version of The Last of Us. This is just, you know, like in the sense that they take 10 hours to deliver this story. You know, like I said earlier, The Last of Us, the original, was a perfect example of like, you know, show don't tell. Like we don't need to see what happens between, you know, fucking summer and autumn, like when after what's his face kills himself after his brother turns, and between then and getting to the university, like we don't need to see that. Like we can just we assume that like they had to deal with some shit along the way, and like, you know, there's all these visual details. Like you don't need to be told that Joel was thinking of Sarah when he was talking about surviving at the end of the game. He just grazes the watch slightly. What part 2 would have done is like go back to a point fucking 10 years ago where Joel has this kind of, you know, this talk with fucking Tess about his daughter, and they go on an adventure to try and find like the fucking the photo or something like that. You know, it's they like
you flash back to say you play Sarah buying the watch.
Yes, exactly. And I was just like, this part 2 is just like, part 1 was show don't tell. This part 2 was like, we are going to explicitly tell you in excruciating detail exactly what went down, so you have no fucking room to interpret the blanks here. Like, we are going to fill those blanks for you. I thought that was a real like astonishing misstep on Naughty Dog's part, to the point that I was like, what? This has to just be padding. Like they put all this work into this game, and they thought, okay, we can't just make it 15 hours like the first game, because then people will complain about like lack of value or something. So we stick this whole other game there, and we try to establish a fucking a Joel and Ellie analog later on, but they do it within such a condensed window that it just I remember texting you just being like, this is, because you were saying like, oh, there's some good character stuff coming up, and I was thinking, yeah, there's some good, you know, there's okay character stuff. Like, it's not the characters I want. It's like, you know, I like, you know, it's
does
like
character development really matter if you don't care about the start or the end of the characters? Like,
yeah, you know, like all I needed to know was that her dad was the doctor. That's all I needed to know.
See, I didn't have such a visceral reaction to it, because I was like, oh, this is I think I was like buoyed along by, oh, this is like a really bold move, and actually I liked Abby's performance. I didn't really like her as a character. She was like occasionally somewhat one note, but I was like, okay, this is interesting. But there's a conspiracy theory that I just thought of. Do you think there's a world in which the Abby section was another game, like was a Left Behind or a Lost Legacy, and because we're coming to the end of a generation, they had to put it in? They couldn't like release it as something else.
Yeah, I would say that is almost certainly the case, because there's no way like, you know, it's, I mean, well, you think of Left Behind in The Last of Us, it was like, that was a little speech. It was a thing that Ellie mentioned at the very end of The Last of Us, and then it was like, okay, here's as the DLC, here's that thing that leads up to that point she was talking about. Like, it's just, and it's a couple of hours, and you know, that's what it is. This was almost certainly that. Like, it's
the only thing that dissuades me from thinking that is the ending would have been so disjointed without that. I think I agree that it could have probably been like halved in terms of length, or it could have just been, it could have, because obviously they do like the day 1, 2, 3, and then they're like, okay, let's do Abby's day 1, 2, 3. See if they had just liberally cut between sections and didn't have tons of exploration, I think it could have worked a lot better. Like, see if you went from the WLF stadium to looking for Owen, and then she's captured by the Seraphites. If it's all just happening, and then it gets to the Yara and Lev stuff, and then that's a bit longer, I could see that working. But like the pure slow opening mission, that's the kind of thing that when I think about playing it again, I'm like, I can't really be bothered playing that part again.
Yeah. It's definitely like when they started saying like, oh, it's that building like way off in the fucking distance that we've got to get to. I was like,
yeah,
for fuck's sake, really?
Like shit, I hope we get a jetpack.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Or like, are they gonna like cut for time essentially? Like,
yeah,
okay, we don't need to make this journey because we've already fucking more or less made it as Ellie. Like, surely they're not going to make us do it all again. And it's like, nope, they're making you do.
Like they literally could have, Abby could have walked up to like a WLF truck and convinced them to give her a ride and just be like, oh, I got lost out here on a patrol, and there's your time, like your time back. But she heads to find Owen, and she's captured by the Seraphites in one of the most visually striking scenes when she's getting interrogated by those by the cult. That was the scene that was in one of the trailers when people were like, is that Ellie's ma? Proving that gamers are the stupidest people in the entire world.
Oh, fuck.
So we're introduced to Yara and Lev, who are two Seraphites that have defected, and you work with them. So when they start introducing more characters, are you just like, how are we going to have to play another third of this game as these two people? Or
yeah, I mean, it was like that was. I mean, it would. So they already did the whole your enemies have backstories thing. They did that in the gameplay. Then they did it with Abby, where it's like, okay, here's her entire fucking story leading up to this point, and that complicates why Ellie would want to kill her, presumably. Then they introduce Abby's enemy as having their own fleshed out backstory. I mean, well, I don't know. Like Yara and Lev don't really get the time dedicated to them that like Abby and Ellie
definitely not.
And there are issues with that. Like I've seen some kind of some talk from like trans people saying like, hey, like the rest of this game is kind of pretty remarkably like diverse, and they're what quote unquote like makes them diverse like is not the focus of their character, whereas Lev's struggle is kind of almost entirely centered around the fact that they're trans.
Yeah.
Like, and like I don't really feel like qualified to talk on a lot of that stuff.
Same. I totally get that, but I do. Yeah, there's not. They could have played more into the idea of, because it's just an offhand thing where they're like, oh, traditionally in the Seraphites, like Lev was chosen to be a wife. And then when Abby says, do you want to talk about it? He says no. And it's not like let's not talk about it now, but I'll talk about it later. He just doesn't talk about it. So it doesn't really, I suppose that's kind of like, it shows that he never really gives Abby the trust, which is strange, because jumping forward a wee bit, in fact, no, that's far too far to jump forward. I completely forgot how much is in this game. Jesus Christ, this is like I've got like 30 bullet points here, and I missed the bit where Ellie just gets a boat, where you're going about in a boat for a while.
Oh, God. I mean that bit was interesting because then you start to see like there's a section in that where you see like, oh, the WLF are facing off against the Seraphites. There's a building where you're on the boat and you see the buildings kind of on like, or it's lit up and everything, and like the Seraphites are attacking the WLF that are on the boat, and I thought that was interesting, and that comes into play a lot more later on. But
I like those. I like the kind of like, oh, this is when this happened and this is when this happened kind of bits. I'm a mark for that kind of stuff in storytelling. I think it works well here because it's not overly obvious. They don't do a split screen with like a clock in the corner and be like, this is what's happening specifically here. Lev and so Yara gets injured and she has to they have to go to the WLF hospital, and that begins Abby and Lev's kind of Joel and Ellie dynamic, and that's the part where you you text me, and you're just like, this is dragging. So
yeah, it's I don't know. Like the whole setup of like, okay, Abby and Lev is meant to be Joel and Ellie. It's like I was just like, we have had no time with Lev by comparison, and like I'm already like the only reason I grew to dislike Abby was because of the fact that her story completely obliterates the game's pacing. Like that was like, you know, I have a feeling that if it was like a DLC or something like that, then it would have actually been really interesting. Like, but it's just, so by the time they were trying to introduce like Lev as the kind of Ellie analog, or like just the ward that Abby is taking to this other place, I was just like, it was a thing of like, okay, we've got to get Yara to the aquarium. Oh, we've got to get the equipment from the hospital. So we've got to travel all the way to the fucking hospital, and then oh no, we've got to escape the WLF who have been reported AWOL, and then oh no, we've got to fight the fucking inside monster and all that, and like it's just like so much stuff where I'm like, okay, I get it. The enemies have backstories. The enemies have backstories. Like, please, can we get back to the theater? Like, I'm just dying to know what fucking happens to Tommy and Ellie. Like that. You know, it wasn't. You know, it wasn't. I didn't like care about the stories of these people. It was just like they were just shoved in so fucking like.
And it was like, at the behest of a story that you were waiting to be resolved. Like,
yeah. It's like, okay, here, you dangle this in front of you and then pull it away. You know, like in a really like. And it's not like kind of like bait and switch thing where it's like it didn't strike me as clever. It just struck me as like, oh no, you're going to eat your vegetables before you get to the dessert.
Yeah,
it's like and I don't know. The Lev and Abby thing just had zero time to like. It both had way too much time that it obliterated the story's pacing, and way too little time to actually form a kind of believable relationship. Of that kind.
I said as much in my review, but it feels like if we're saying broadly that you get like 9 hours as Ellie, 9 hours as Abby, and then like 3 hours for the the finale section, it should have been like 12 to 15 hours as Ellie, maybe 3 hours as Abby, and then the rest for the finale. Like, it didn't. I don't think that I still think this game's incredible, and I absolutely love it and stand by everything I said in my review. But as I said in my review, the pacing is the number one problem with it. It's far too long.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a world in which it's the same length hours wise, but it isn't far too long because of the way it's spent. Like, there's a story that can fill that time. They just kind of, and I think it kind of. It diminishes the end somewhat in terms of how they rush it. Speaking of in the hospital, that boss fight. No, I didn't actually hate it because I had so many guns that I melted the thing in about 2 seconds. But I couldn't. I was like, is this? I thought it'd be like a cutscene only kind of boss where it grabs at you and you're like, oh shit, and maybe it's an interactive cutscene where you turn and you see something that you can shoot and that kills it. When you're actually running away from it, then it splits into its second form. I was like, is this Resident Evil 5? Like, what?
Yeah, I was like, what's this fucking like alien like shit? You know, like I fucking love Alien, but it was like, what? How did this turn into this weird fucking like? That was just like, I mean, I died a few times on that, but the checkpoints are so fucking like generous, like, which is a weird knock against the game, because it's like, okay, I'm really fucking glad that the checkpoints were generous here, because these, like, the way I described it to you, I think was like, oh, it's like Naughty Dog said, oh, you know that forced bloater fight in the school gym in the first game?
Yeah.
Everyone loved that. I think let's make that. Like, let's make it so that, you know, it's dark so you can't see fucking shit.
Bro,
and
let's make this thing so many arms the power of the PlayStation 4, the amount of arms and faces this thing can have, you won't believe it.
What I noticed was when you go into the model viewer and you like zoom in on that thing, at least on my base PS4, the frame rate fucking tanks.
Nice.
It's like it's great.
As an aside, how did it run? Because I was obviously playing on the PlayStation 4 Professional because I'm a professional gamer, and the only times I ever had hitches were like super rainy scenes when I was swinging the camera about a lot. But apart from that, it ran fairly well. I was playing. I don't know what they bought it because I was playing it because I also have a 4K monitor, not to flex. But I was playing it on that 4K flex, and it didn't. I was like, when I played God of War on that 4K setting, it was just like, okay, see this frame rate you're so interested in, forget it. It's gonna be a slideshow, but it'll be the best looking slideshow you've ever seen. How did it run for you?
It was actually surprising. Like I was incredibly surprised at both how consistent the frame rate was. I can't remember any significant hitching outside of the model viewer. And also, what was the other point I was going to make? I forgot. But it ran really. Oh no, it ran really well, and it also didn't make my PS4 feel like it was going to fucking take off. Like because every single like AAA video game that's come out in the last like 2 years has like I've actually been worried about my PS4 breaking because the fan is going, like that
going
fucking loud.
2 million RPM, like is so loud. Like I've cleaned my PS4 and it's a problem with the design of the PS4 that they acknowledged, and it's the reason the PS5 is the size of a jumbo jet. Like but yeah, I think it's very impressive that it runs that well on this generation of hardware, and when they eventually like tart it up a bit for the PS5, I'm sure it will look even better. But after that boss fight, which was a misstep, Lev runs away to find his mother on the Seraphite Island and then commences the attack on the Seraphite Island. I thought this was a cool set piece that I mostly snuck through because I was kind of sick of the fighting at that point. I was like, I want to get back to the theatre. I can't be bothered getting detected 1,000 times. But the game does give you opportunity to sneak through like every combat encounter, which I thought was pretty cool.
You know what I did at that point? I fucking sprinted. That's a lie. For the first kind of part of it where you're in that kind of cornfield type thing, I had to kind of stealth my way through it because there's a door that you get to that you have to do that whole like hold triangle thing, and if there's enemies about, then it's not going to happen. But the bit where it was like the bit after that where it was like the Seraphites and the WLF are fighting each other, I was just like, right, I'm out. I was just sprinting through fucking all of it because at that point I was like, right, how fucking long can you make me play this? Like, I'm not doing the thing anymore where I'm going through and mashing triangle to pick up every single supply in every room I fucking come across. So I was just like, right, I'm done. Get me out of here. Like, you're right. I think it was a cool set piece that by that point I just it was another one of those things where Lev was saying it was Yara at that point that was saying like, the boats are beyond the flames, and I was like, those flames are fucking ages away, man. Are you fucking kidding me? Can we not just you guys go ahead and fucking sail it around here and I'll wait? Like
there's a funny line in the Edge review where it was like, our apologies to the Naughty Dog artists, but we're on the run. The amount of work that's probably been poured into these things that we're sprinting past 100 miles an hour. And I was thinking about that, like when I was thinking about the Seraphite Island, like all this amazing animation work, just full pelt.
Yeah, so exactly.
Abby goes back to the aquarium and finds Owen and Mel dead, and then we are back at the theatre for what is a boss fight that I'm very conflicted on. Abby versus Ellie, round 1. What did you think of that?
I hated it. I thought that not only was it, like The Last of Us has never done boss fights well.
Yeah.
But this was also one where it's like, are you fucking kidding me? You're like, I thought that was going to be like the end of the game at that point. Like, I was thinking like, oh shit, and you're making me play as Abby to kill Ellie, which assumes a lot about what you think I think about Abby. Like, I immediately was like, right, I'm just shooting all my bullets so I have none left. And I just multiple times I just I wanted to see if it was like, oh, is this a kind of like weird false choice thing where it was like, if Ellie just kills me, does that
end the game one way?
Yeah, and no, it just kind of, and when I did that the first time and it came up with a game over screen, I was like, you're really going to make me fucking do this, aren't you? Like, and I was like, actually, it wasn't like a kind of like, oh no, you can't make me kill Ellie. It was like, fuck you. It was like, and you know, obviously the outcome of that battle is that, you know, the Ellie and Dina survive and the baby survives despite Dina getting her head repeatedly smashed into fucking concrete.
Yeah. Dina's got that Ellie strength. As soon as they banged, she passed it through, and that was it.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually, this is a weird thing. Like, they brush past the fact that Dina knows that Ellie's immune.
Yeah.
Like just like it's part of one conversation that immediately jumps to Dina's pregnant, and then it's like, okay, we're going to
circle back round. We're going to come back round to this. You're the chosen one. Nah, not relevant.
Exactly. Yeah. So but I don't know. I was really mad at that boss fight.
I think that boss fight would have been like, if I'd beaten that boss fight on the first try, I probably wouldn't have like disliked it as much. But it took me like 5 tries because Ellie wouldn't stop fucking spinning in circles, so I couldn't get behind her. I was just like, this is too hard, God. Man. Like. And
that's there's one thing I want to say as well. Like, there are some weird glitches in this game. Like it's you know, frame rate's fine, everything like that. But there were points where I would just get to like bits where characters were meant to help me with something and the game would just freeze, or textures wouldn't load in. Like the Tommy sniper fight was fucking hilarious because I was running down the hallway to try and get to Tommy and then just fucking fell into this void of nothing that was just the waves, and Tommy was just like running along the sky because the environment failed to load in and stuff like that. And it was so yeah, I don't know. There's and the Ellie fight was similar where it was like, wait, I did what you asked, and Ellie's now fucking spinning around and fucking.
Yeah, I think the game can't really handle characters that you can't like one shot very well. Characters that aren't in that normal model, if you get close enough to them with a good melee weapon, they will go down. Ones that have to have like magical health don't kind of operate the same. But after that fight, Abby leaves Ellie alive. Then we flash forward several years to Dina getting her farmhouse with Ellie, and it's a super, super cute scene. And I was like, okay, this is a good way to end it. Ellie didn't get her revenge because frankly she didn't deserve it. The mass murder spree she's just went on, like, she's lucky she's still alive. And then as soon as she goes into the barn and gets the PTSD scene from Joel, which I thought was handled really, really well and well performed, I was like, this game's got another fucking hour to go, hasn't it? Like, it's like this is just gonna go and go and go. And then Tommy guilts what is essentially his surrogate niece into going and fulfilling his revenge, and we head to Santa Barbara. See when it came up on Abby and Lev and Santa Barbara, I would have loved to see the look in your face.
My girlfriend was watching, and she said, like, she was on her laptop in the back, and she was like, wait, are they making you play as Abby and Lev again? and I just kind of like just silently like nodded my head.
A single tear rolls down your
face. That section is mercifully brief.
Yeah.
But I was right. I was honestly, I was like, if you hadn't told me that I was close to the end at that point, I would have like probably stopped there for the day.
Yeah.
And you know, taken like a substantial break, because at that point I was like, this is really, really trying. But it also, like, I did think that section was actually quite good in how it's like, okay, well, yeah, like Abby and Lev are closer now. Like they're functioning as a unit now in the same way.
They've got a bit of patter, like when Lev's like, why do you always point out when I'm wrong? Because it so rarely happens. Like stuff like that was cool.
Yeah, totally. And it's like that stuff is what I liked about the first game, where it's like, okay, there's a period of time. We don't need to know what happens there. We we can see the differences between now and then and figure out the rest. Like that's good storytelling as far as I'm concerned. So that section actually, once I got into it a bit more, I thought was fine.
And then so Ellie and Dina, a wee bit before that, Ellie's basically like, I'm gonna go and do this, and she leaves in the middle of the night, and Dina's basically like, if you do this, we're done. And I was like, I hope they follow through on that. And then when Ellie goes after them, the Rattlers, which are this like kind of Californian missionary group, there was like a little bit more Ellie gameplay and a really hard bit like getting through the kind of compound because Abby and Lev are captured, and then you find Abby and Lev crucified on the beach. And I was like, that bit in Garth Marenghi, it's like, I know writers that use subtext are cowards. It's like, yeah, okay, Ellie, you help them down from their cross, and then Ellie beats the absolute shit out of her. I was like, okay, that's actually a bit of a swerve. I thought it was literally they were both literally just going to get on boats and then move away into the night while Neil Druckmann comes up on the screen. But they have like an absolute horrendous brutal fight, and I really like that ending to the game. And the way that Ellie spares Abby is because she gets a flashback of Joel playing the guitar. And what did you think of how that specific ending scene was handled when they're battering lumps out of each other?
So like, yeah, this kind of comes back to something I mentioned at the start. Like, I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to, I mean, a lot of people already are like labeling this game as just like misery porn, and you know, like, and I get that to a certain extent. There's a kind of just almost purely because of the fidelity of how it's all rendered. There is almost a kind of inherent fetishization of like the gore of like every fucking like the smack of every like punch. You know, it's like, and it's, you know, it's genuinely like uncomfortable to watch. And so like I get the feeling that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you know, it's just kind of needlessly violent or whatever. And I think that I've grown to, you know, take issue with that whole that kind of approach. It kind of screams to me a bit of like, you know, the kind of moral panic crowd of, you know, like Mortal Kombat's too gory. You know, like sometimes art has to engage with the miserable and the overly violent. Like, you know, in film there's the new French Extremity, and like that uses violence and misery to explore some, you know, really like important societal topics and stuff that, you know, that sometimes it takes going to that fucking extreme to kind of really cut to the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
I think this game, in saying that, I do not think this game, basically this game, it says that vengeance does not lead to happiness. And like, okay, cool. I get it. Like, I got that a while ago. I got that in the fucking first game, or you know, not necessarily in the first game, but it's because that again, you know,
the first game in this game, the first of the two games that are in this game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, you know, yeah, you see that when you like you say, like, you grow to kind of dislike Ellie to a certain extent because she's just so consumed by this thing that you know will be fruitless. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that that was the point where I was kind of like, look, I'd say at that point in the game, I'd said, I get it a lot. I was like, I get it. You know,
at that point, I was basically, as soon as I saw the Joel flashback, I was like, oh, good. I really hope there's more Joel and Ellie, like just to sneak in. And that scene of them on the porch is fantastic. That is Troy Baker gives it absolute socks. He is, I think, there needed to be more Joel in this, but I think the lack of him is also like trying to reinforce the theme of just how much Ellie misses him, because the players are like, oh, like Joel the person, like the mass murderer in Joel is kind of horrible, but like there's hints that by now Joel is a much different person. like the song that, and I'm planning on talking about this in a different venue, but the song that he plays for Our Future Days literally has the line, like, all my stolen missing parts I've no need for anymore, and that's like the entire like thesis of who he is now. He's like, me and Tommy do our patrols, but we're not like mercenaries anymore, we're protectors. And I just, that scene of those two, and the idea of trauma being so bad that you can't promise that you're going to forgive someone, but you can at least try, and that's something that is so much braver than Ellie just being like, I forgive you.
And exactly.
I thought that was handled. I think that's what, like, that's the thing that brought it back around for me. I was like, okay, I think they've stuck this. Like, I think that pulls it off for me.
Yeah, I definitely think that, like, rounding that game off playing as Ellie and getting that, it was like, okay, this is what I came here for, and it was good enough that I was like, man, okay, I can forgive that fucking 10-hour stretch. Joel has kind of changed in a lot of ways, and it's like, you know, when he says, like, you know, if I could do it again, I would, you know, like, that's a really big fucking thing. You know, like, he's essentially saying, like, if I could go back and have you die, then I would, because we missed out a flashback, like I kind of mentioned it earlier, when they go to get the guitar strings, and they have that kind
of like Joel and Ellie, that Joel and Ellie gameplay that's like the only time that they're together in that kind of sense.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, they find the two kind of runaways, they stumble across them, and Ellie's like, you know, oh, you know, would have been great. This wouldn't have happened if there were a vaccine or something.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, there's a long time of Ellie knowing exactly what went down, and Joel trying his fucking hardest to, like, move past it and stuff. But, you know,
eventually
it's like
accepts that, like, the first conversation in the game when Joel's cleaning that guitar and he's telling Tommy about it, that to me was like, he knows, like, he knows that this is, I think that's him explaining to Tommy why him and Ellie have been distant, because I think that's like just after he must have told her. But so did you interpret that, because I interpreted the thing he said on the porch as, if I had to do it again, I would save you again, like he wouldn't do it any different.
I thought you said, like, if he could do it differently, he would, but I don't know. I could be wrong on that.
Well, anyway, so that was like my moment of, like, he still, more than anything, just wants, like, the entire point of The Last of Us is, for Joel, is him trying to get back to, like, that night where he's sitting on the couch with Sarah watching the telly, like that, and he's not going to give that up again, and that's kind of how I interpreted that last part. And Ellie took that as, like, I don't agree with why he did it, but I can understand that he didn't do it maliciously. He obviously cares a lot about me, and that's why she's like, well, I can't promise, but I'll try for you, kind of thing.
Right? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfectly valid. I mean, just, you know, it's also like, you know, Joel he says that he kind of jokes about, he's embarrassed about how much he had to trade for a cup of coffee. You know, it's like he wants that life so desperately. But, you know, the way that I kind of interpreted it was like, you know, if I could have done things differently, I could have given you that. I could have not, like, taken that choice from you or whatever. Like, and you know, it's weird. I think that, that again, that's the Last of Us stuff that I really like, where it's like, we can have two different, like, theories about about what that means, because it doesn't overtly say.
The best parts of The Last of Us are those two trying to have a conversation, but going around it in every possible way to not actually say to the other one how they actually feel, because they're both so emotionally stunted. And that is like, that is The Last of Us to me. Like, it's like I like the stealth gameplay. It's fun. I like the exploration and stuff. It's like really interesting. It's the best looking game potentially ever made. But that's the stuff that I come here for, and I think that really sticks the ending. We're running out of time slightly. What are your lasting overall thoughts, and is there anything that we didn't touch on?
I mean, I don't know. I really wish that part was shorter. The second act, like that would have sent this game from, like, you know, like a largely very enjoyable game with some major pacing issues to, like, you know, a really great episode of The Last of Us. You know what I mean? It's never going to reach the highs of that character study, but it's, you know, it could have filled in the blanks, like, or it could have, like, explored some more of that dynamic between the two of them in like kind of what happened next and how Ellie deals with that in a way that was really that would have meant a lot to fans at the very least. And it does, like, you know, what they do. I think, you know, I feel I don't feel terrible having played that game. I just think that the decision to focus so heavily on that story in the middle part of the game just really soured it for me. So
that's fair. I still think my biggest problem is the pacing, and I said as much in the review. I still think the good so heavily outweighs my issues with that I still think it's an absolutely exceptional game, and I love the bravery of making a game that is so grim and dark and gives basically no... It doesn't pull its punches in any sense, and I think there's room for other games to do that, but the key for me is, if the game didn't look that good, I wouldn't have believed it, and I would have thought, like, oh, whatever. Like, that this is a perfect example of, like, games reaching a graphical fidelity where they basically unlock new abilities and storytelling because they have room for subtlety and facial expressions and stuff. You talk so much about the glance from the first one in your video. This game is like, there's like 500,000 glances. Like, they took that as people loved that moment, and they were like, okay, we can use this kind of storytelling throughout. Like, when Dina and... If you just watch the way Dina and Ellie look at each other, that is something that could not be achieved on previous hardware and by most developers on this hardware. I just think it's very well done, and I think it's a game that when the dust settles, I think there will be a big divide between people who really think that the second half kills it and people who think the second half is essential. And I think that's an interesting... I think I probably fall like 80% towards essential. Obviously you won't be buying your life-size replica Abby statue anytime soon. To be fair, that would be fucking huge. How would you fit it in your house? The size of her arms, you wouldn't be able to get it through the door.
Oh man,
it's a fun game to talk about, and thank you for talking about it with me, Hamish.
Well, thank you for having me on. I've been dying to kind of, like, I mean, you must have been dying to do this for, like...
God, and I was like, do I know anyone that has this game? Like, I have to... I've just been basically, like, in all my pals, like, I've literally just been talking to my girlfriend and been like, right, this is what happens, and here's why it's relevant, and she's like, oh yeah, it's like, okay, you don't have the context of, like, this entire other game. Like, it's been a difficult one. Plug your shit.
So I run a YouTube channel about kind of narrative design in games and game design in general. It's called Writing on Games. You can look it up there. I host a podcast with my friend Nico Blakely called the Writing on Games Cast. You can find that on anchor.fm/Writing on Games Cast. I think that's pretty much...
You're an occasional tweeter?
Sometimes I hate Twitter with a fucking passion.
If you hate Twitter, why do you have so many sick followers that I don't have?
It's because I have so many great opinions about The Last of Us Part 2. No, it's I don't know. I mean, you can follow me at Writing on Games. I'm trying to not interact with that at all anymore.
I think that's smart. I encourage you to follow all of those things. Links will be all over the page and all over the description and all over the screen. It'll be really difficult to look at. Until next time, please subscribe to this, because it was I've been sitting in this roasting hot chair for an hour and a half and I can feel the skin melting off me. And I'd appreciate if you subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Tell me what you thought about The Last of Us Part 2 in the comments. I was about to say, don't leave spoilers, but then I forgot what this video was. Until next time, from me, Jordan, it's goodbye. From Hamish,
it's also goodbye.
And we'll see you later.